um, I never know what I'm going to say with these things. I and I do that on purpose. Like I could make it easier and have some, you know, today I'm going to talk about higher self or something like that. I don't know. But I'm not interested in that. It's not, even though it's like, yeah, it would make it easier for me. But in a way, it would lose its vitality because, as I said in other ones, it's really important, I think, to just be able to really see the person. Or what I hope to do in these is for you to be able to see me as clearly as I can. And if I've prepared myself in some way, or if I'm a little bit put together, it's not the same. Because, well, let me put it this way. I think I mentioned before that Barry Long was my spiritual teacher. And like I started listening to Barry on cassette tape initially. And then I read books. And then I went to see him the first time. And when I went to see him the first time, I'd been so cheated up by the tapes and the books that I was kind of quaking when I went to see him first. Sorry, something just distracted me there. So I was kind of quaking when I went to see him first. And when I say I went to see him, it's not like I sat down and had a cup of tea with him. He was up on a stage, and the room was full of, like, I think it was about 400 people. So even at that, I was like, I'm in his presence, Now, I didn't make that up on my own. The tapes and the books had kind of encouraged me to think like that. And, I went to see him. I mean, I had a 10-year association with Barry Long. And at some point, I was living in Australia because he was based in Australia. And I volunteered to help out with, they were recording his sessions. So I volunteered to help out with that. So I got a little bit closer to the, what he was like as a person. And I offered to treat him. He had a bit of physical problem, and I knew about it, and I offered to give him some craniosacral, which I did. And again, I was quaking, but that was quite natural, actually. He was quite normal in that. He wasn't, the teacher. But he wasn't particularly ordinary either. Now that could have been me because I was just terrified. Sorry, I keep looking at the computer just to see if anyone's asking any questions or anything. That could have been me projecting, but there's probably a bit of that, but mostly not. Towards the end, I was, these videos that I was helping them make, it was, I don't know, 20 years ago now. So the technology wasn't great. It wasn't like you could just do it on a laptop. So I was editing this video in a house not far from where Barry lived, and he dropped in. And there was myself and my partner at the time and somebody else there. And I kind of thought he would be just like when I'd been treating him. And he was watching the video, and he started talking. And he started talking like there was a room full of 400 people there. And I remember, even though I was still, I'm in the presence of Barry a little bit, I just remember thinking, he can't turn it off. Like, he can't stop being the guru. And I suppose that was helpful for me in a way, because it was like, I was a little bit like, that must be awful. That must be awful that he can't just be ordinary, like really ordinary, like just hanging out. So if I prepared myself to do this, I would be a little bit like that. I'm sure Barry just got up and started talking as well. I don't know, but I know for me, I would love to have prepared something to talk about, because it just makes it more easier, you know. So I don't, because I want you to, well, not I want you to, I want us both. I want us both to be as real as possible in this strange kind of system. Oh, hang on, somebody's right. Somebody's saying it feels the same with actors, that they can't turn it off either. I imagine it would be. I've known a few actors. Some, yeah, I get that from them. They can't stop doing the acting thing. Okay, so yeah, yeah. They're saying yes, it's they can't turn it off. So what is coming up is just a sort of something I've noticed in what's happening, like globally, which is hilarious, because there's no such thing as globally, really. Like, what there is information that comes into my little reality bubble about, what's going on out there. And while it's significant, I think it's important to just remember what's real, and what's real is just what's in front of you. And I don't mean that about in an ostrich kind of way, but like there's a process going on at the moment to do with what's real and what's not real. And I don't mean fake news and all that kind of thing. That's part of it, though. It's to do with there's the waters have been so muddied around the lockdown and the COVID-19, and just generally, it kind of started with a couple of while back with the elections, and to do with Brexit, and to do with Donald Trump being elected. As soon as it happened, there was immediately like, that couldn't be real. That couldn't actually be what's happening. Something messed with that. Nobody wanted Brexit. Nobody wanted Donald Trump in. And then there was all this, Cambridge Analytica, which kind of confirmed some of it. And so it started with that. And then we started into the COVID situation, and it was so much information about it, and we have to do this and we have to do that. And then there was the shock of isolation, people going into self-quarantining in different countries, and each country, it seemed like the effect of the quarantining was how it affected the country seemed to reflect what was going on in the country, what was going on unconsciously in the country. There's a lot of strangeness going on in America, and it seems to highlight lots of the different issues that were bubbling away in America. Here in Ireland, we kind of reverted a little bit into hoping that the big mammy state would look after us, and that the government would know what to do, and they'd tell us what to do, and we'd do it a little bit. And then in the UK, it was different again, in Spain, and Italy, all the different countries, they just had their own version of it. So now we're getting used to the whole idea, and the whole quarantining and social distancing, and how we could, in a space of a few months, change so much. And now when we look at something and people are in big groups, people are kind of cringy about it. Like, oh my God, social distancing. I mean, something popped up on one of my feeds, and it was a bunch of hamsters, guinea pigs, at a banquet. It was very cute. They'd made this little guinea pig banquet and all the guinea pigs were there. And somebody in the comments said, those hamsters are not practicing social distancing. Now, I think it was humorously intended, but still, you know, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, 6 months ago, that wouldn't have even occurred to anybody. So, so there's this process now of people kind of going, because now there's more quantifiable data, and now it's like, how many people actually died from this thing, and how when people are talking about testing, what does that actually mean, and what are they testing for, and how reliable is the testing? And people are going, yeah, but there was a study. Wasn't there a study? Didn't a study say this thing, blah, 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 and that's why we did this other thing? Now it's like, yeah, but there's another study now that says a different thing. It's like, what, does that mean we can't trust the studies anymore? And there's just a general feeling of, hang on a minute, like, what? Why did we do that? Now I'm laughing because I'm laughing from the cosmic joke point of view. I'm not trivializing in any way this the human cost and human suffering that's been going on, which has been a lot. But to me anyway, it looks like part of this growth spurt that we're all going through, to do with changing realities. And that's why I was saying about globally and why I was laughing at that, because in my experience, and possibly yours, there's no global, there's no nothing like that. Like, there's only really what you have direct experience of. And again, that is kind of, you could kind of go, but like, that's ridiculous. And it's that's an understandable perspective. But I'm just talking about if you just take your own experience of things, because we're kind of told, not necessarily overtly told, but in another way we are, that we only know a certain amount, and the rest, there's an external authority that's going to tell us about the rest of it. Meaning, if you think of a country you've never been to, like I've never been to Bermuda. Okay, so I'm told that Bermuda exists. I've seen pictures of it. I've seen films of it. I might have even talked to people who are from Bermuda. But for me, Bermuda doesn't exist. It's not real. It's just something I've been told about. And people kind of go, but that's completely unscientific and ridiculous thing to say. And yeah, it is in one way. But then, and it's not like I'm saying Bermuda doesn't exist. You know, I don't know whether it exists or not. I know it doesn't exist for me because I haven't experienced it. And again, that I'm not being pedantic here. It's kind of very useful to keep this in your mind, I think, for me anyway, of what is real and what's not real. For example, I remember sitting on a train when the stock market crashed in 2008, and it was just around the time I was getting into Twitter, and like Twitter just blew up with, oh my God, the sky is falling. And it was a lovely sunny day, I think, and I was on a train and I was healthy and happy. And I think I made a tweet about it, kind of going something to that effect, you know, like that the world might be falling apart, but it's a nice day. So you could say, well, that's just like somebody sitting on the beach that's about to be hit by a tsunami saying, I don't know what everyone's worried about. It's a lovely day and the sun is shining. But in another way, that is true. You know, it sort of reminds me of that story of the Zen monk. It's always a Zen monk, isn't it? But let's say it's a Zen monk. He's gone through the jungle, and he's suddenly he hears kind of growling behind him, and he turns around and there's a tiger about to, you know, pounce. Yeah, let's say pounce. Tiger about to pounce. So he starts running, right? And he manages to get away from the tiger a little bit, or he doesn't get eaten straight away. So he's running and running and running, and the tiger is, you know, I don't know, must be having an off day or not that motivated because he doesn't catch him. Anyway, he runs and runs, and then comes to the edge of a cliff, and he is like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And the tiger is still coming. So he sees a vine going down the side of the cliff, and he goes, oh, great, I'm going to climb down this vine. So he climbs down the vine, and he's about halfway down when he hears growling, and he looks up, and there's a tiger above him. But as he's climbing down, the growling is getting louder, and he looks down, and there's like 3 tigers below him. So he's got a tiger above him and 3 tigers below him, and he's like, oh. So he's kind of stuck in the middle. And so he's like, I'll just rest here and try and figure it out. And it's one of those things where he's not close enough to the cliff to be able to climb onto it and climb sideways or get away. Or, yeah, don't press me for details here on this, okay? He's just stuck in the middle, all right? So then he notices a strange kind of vibration in the vine, and he looks up, and about close to the top, up where the tiger is, there's a little mouse, and he's gnawing away on the vine. Okay, so the vine is, dangerously close to snapping. And he's like, oh okay. And he looks down, and there's the tigers below. And then he looks sort of straight in front of him. And straight in front of him, there's a strawberry, and it's beautiful looking. It's just at that moment, when fruit is like just at the moment it should be picked. So he reaches out and he strains and he strains, and he just about manages to get it. And it's quite big for a strawberry, and it's very juicy. And he takes a bite out of it. And it's the most beautiful strawberry he's ever tasted in his whole life. And that's the end of the story. And I don't think it has a happy ending, but in a way it does, because it's about coming into the moment or the instant that you're in. And even though things are all around, really what counts is right now and what's right in front of you. So as I've gone through this lockdown, with all its different, Ireland is, it's coming out of lockdown. It's pretty much coming out of lockdown now. The pubs aren't open yet, but yeah, it's not far off. But even when it was, there was a 2-kilometer restriction on travel to the houses and everything like that, I had a lovely time. But then I kind of make it my business to have a lovely time as much as I can. And that's not to say that every moment is pain or suffering free. I've had all sorts of different things that I've gone through during this period. But everything happens in the instant or in the moment. So while on the one hand I could have been overwhelmed by something, the next instant it could be good or gone. And what I try and do is just be available for joy and happiness and sweetness and my true nature to sort of present or reveal itself or show itself or be with me in moment to moment. So when I talk about globally, for me it's an abstract thing, but then it's also an energetic thing, because in as much as I'm sensitive to people when I'm close to them, I'm kind of sensitive to the, I don't know what you'd call it. Oh, somebody called it something recently I thought was good. Global consciousness. Yeah, that sounded sort of right. Even though I'm using the word globally. Hang on, someone's just commented. There's also a feeling of chaos that I cannot sense within me. I think that means sense within me, which may have to be a resonance of the collective, meaning the chaos of the collective can affect my individual cells. Yeah, I think that's true. And it's kind of what I mean about being sensitive to it. But then it's just, for me anyway, that's just as it's just the same as if something comes up for me. Like, I don't know about you, but some days I just wake up and I feel weird for no reason. Like, it's not like I slept funny. Or, okay, well, sleep is a weird thing, so let's not say weird. But, you know, I can wake up in the morning and I can be a certain way in the morning. And then in the afternoon, I'm different. Now, it could be the weather. I am affected by the weather. I know that. But let's say it's not that. Let's say it's just, you know, something has happened inside me. Something's bubbling up inside me that I'm dealing with. And that can be, that'll be to do with my unconscious being refined or purified or changed by my consciousness. It's a little bit like, you know, ice melting, and sometimes there's things in the ice that just pop and reveal themselves as the ice is melting. So that can happen. I can just be a certain way, and then suddenly I'm a different way. And that's one of the benefits of meditation. If you meditate frequently, you are continually, meditation is a great way of checking in with your inner state. So you can, if you know, well, my inner state was this morning, and now it's completely different. You kind of are more aware of it, so that, like, you're not just like, oh, that's just because that thing happened or this other thing happened. I mean, I'm lucky in that, or not, well, not that I'm lucky, I've organized my life so that I don't have a huge amount of stimulus, external stimulus happening. So that which makes it easier for me to kind of see what my inner state is. So I've got that kind of thing going on, but then also it's the same as, for me, there's not a huge difference between just my own personal unconscious bubbling up and having a sense of what's going on. Like I was saying in the last week's Zoom group, like this, that, or maybe it was the first one, that people are behaving strangely. Like, and I've just heard of that. I mean, you look on the internet and that's pretty obvious, but the internet's a funny kind of distorting kind of thing. But just people locally, I've heard of people locally, you know, just doing very strange things they wouldn't normally do and behaving strangely. And that's kind of part of this chaos that this person is talking about. That I don't know if it's, I think it can feel like chaos, but I think it's probably more closely to do with disorientation. I was talking about this in the last Zoom group, that things are changing, and they're changing fast, and they're changing quite significantly. And whenever that happens, it can just feel like your grip on reality and your grip on your sanity is slipping. And it isn't even to do with the content of what's changing. It's just the fact of things are not where they normally were. And it's so part of the internal landscape that you wouldn't have even noticed it. It's like when people get rid of a big belief they have about themselves. So let's say you've got huge, you know, you have this big belief that you're weak, and then something happens and you just do something that completely demonstrates to you that you're not weak. You think that would be brilliant, but it can be so unnerving, because you had this big mountain internally, this huge mountain of, I am a weak being, and it's gone now. And it's like, you know, it's like driving home and all the traffic lights and all the intersections have been moved around, and you're just like, what's going on? And that can feel chaotic, but I don't think it's chaos. I think it is this kind of disorientation, you know. Right, this person is right. It feels like a recalibration and having the need to constantly adapt to the change. Yeah, yes. And it's really tiring. It can be really tiring. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I've noticed that it's not like my energy levels are down or anything like that, but I just often feel like I just need a rest. I need a little sit down, as my mother would say. Um, just to sort of catch my breath or something, even though nothing's happening, as I say. Um, yeah. But I think for like you are in a great place because you're conscious of what's happening and you're actively um, engaged with the process. That's a huge benefit because there's so many people who are not and are really suffering because they don't know what's happening. And not like I know what's happening or anything like that, but they're just distressed and they don't know why they're distressed, and they're like deeply distressed and they don't know why they're distressed, which accounts for a lot of the strange behavior, and why I encourage everybody to treat everybody as if they've just had a car accident and survived and they're very shook, because that's the way everybody is, I think. But if you have a sense of it, of what's happening, then that makes it a lot easier to deal with, and you can, instead of getting pounded by the wave, you can get a little bit on top of the wave. I mean, sometimes it's going to dunk you, but you can get a little bit on top of the wave and sort of be with it, or be in the river. I I've heard a story about Osho, who used to be Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, who that Netflix documentary, The Wild Country, is about. It's a fun documentary. I knew a few sannyasins who were at the ranch, and they told me stories that completely back up what that documentary was about. Anyway, Osho was an Indian fellow, and he when he was a kid, there was a river near where they lived, and when it was in flood, the local kids used to go swimming in it. Now, when I say swimming, it was a river in full flood, so they pretty much jumped in and then just tried to not drown and tried to get out, whatever, a mile down the downstream, because it went up and down, and these big huge mountainous water funnels and whatever, and some kids were killed in it apparently. Anyway, Osho used to like going swimming in this river, and his parents were just beside themselves with fear about that. And he was talking about this to his disciples, or sannyasins as they were called. And he was saying that he never had a problem in the river because he didn't fight the river. He would just jump in and he would just let the river take him. And he would just be like completely flexible in the water and be going up and down with all the twists and turns of the river. Now, that's coming from, an Indian guru. Nothing against Indian gurus, but they generally like to tell, nice stories. And I don't know, I've seen people going down rivers in canoes, and if you completely relaxed in that, I have a feeling you might get smashed into the walls of the canyon. But maybe there were no canyons, and maybe it was just a nice big broad river. It's a lovely story, though. I like the spirit of the story, where he just surrenders to the river. And that's kind of what you have to do at the moment, because it is moving very fast and it is changing. But at the moment, which is kind of what I started off to say, is we're in a funny kind of thing at the moment where, as I say, there was the COVID, what was called a crisis, then there was the lockdown, and now we're somewhere in between all that. We're not completely terrified that COVID is going to kill us anymore. When I say we, I'm just speaking about what I'm picking up just generally. There's a feeling of, I think it's going to be okay, because human nature being what it is, it's like, did I meet anybody who actually got it? Do I know people who got it and died? Maybe one, maybe 1.5, or maybe I knew somebody who got it. I mean, personally, I don't know anybody who died from it. not, I've heard of people locally who uh, got it and died and were diagnosed with it. Just one. And then I know somebody who knew somebody who died. And then I know somebody who I talked to who got it and was hospitalized. And that's it. And yes, I live in a, you know, a little community here, but I talk to a lot of people on, you know, like I talk to artists, you know, with the podcast quite a bit, and yeah, very little. So we're kind of in this, hang on, this person's saying something. I guess in America, there's an additional tensions with the upcoming elections and the political and religious aspect of wearing a mask. Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was saying about, like in America, like America seems to be going through a lot and has been going through a lot for a good few years now. And the COVID situation just seems to pressure test everything that's going on. And any bits of unconsciousness in a country, it just highlights. So from the outside, you could go, why has wearing a mask become such a thing in America? Like I don't think in any other country it's because it has that kind of connotation. But then it's very similar to gun control in America. From the outside, like I was I living in America? I was living in Australia. I think I moved to Australia just after the Tasmanian shooting, which was I think the only mass shooting there was in Australia. So it wasn't long after I'd got there that the gun control laws came into America, and pretty much everyone just had to forfeit their guns, no personal firearms at all. Everyone had to surrender their guns. And there's never been a mass shooting in Australia since. So from the outside, it seems very strange that there would be gun control. Like, why can't they just do that in America? That's the kind of vibe, right? But it's like, well, I think that's a shallow kind of take on it, because it's not by accident that there's issues with it. It sort of speaks to something very fundamental. It looks like, I mean, I'm no expert on America. Excuse me, I've been there, you know, a few times. And of course, everybody who watches movies thinks they know America, but it's my experience. It's, you know, America is not any one thing. It's like a lot of small places, like even like take little Ireland, like where I live in Ireland is very different to Dublin, which is a major city. You know, so you could say they're completely different realities. And America is a vast landmass with lots of different realities. So there's something about gun control. There's something about wearing masks that just highlights something that's going on there. That's something that's being worked out. And like even each state seems to, again, this is just looking from the outside, seems to handle it differently. The COVID situation. So it brings in, as you say, religion, politics, the elections, like from, I mean, of course, because I talk to mostly artists, I've only encountered one person who was like, Donald Trump's great and he's doing a great job. Everybody else I've talked to is like, what is happening? How is this happening in my country? Which is, you know, it's sad. But then, you know, Ireland has got its own things. There are things happening in this country I'm not proud of. And, you know, I would really like for them to change as well. So I kind of have a feeling of what that's like. I mean, obviously, we don't have someone like Donald Trump here, but yeah, I can relate to that. So what I was getting at about the current situation is we've been through all this turmoil, and now there is a strange feeling of not calm. It would be like a car accident, actually. I don't know if you've ever been in a car accident, but there's the accident, and then if no one's hurt, there's a period, like I was coming back from Canada one time with some young friends. I was young too. And we were driving back from Canada back to Boston, which is, I don't know, it's a 12-hour drive or something like that, 14 hours. And the chap driving the car was young, like we were all in our 20s, early, mid 20s, mid to late 20s. And like I started driving when I was 18, so I don't know what, I don't want to say I had more experience than him, but we were on a highway. It had been quite sunny, and then suddenly it started to rain, and he hadn't slowed down at all, which I kind of noticed. And then the road markings were quite wide, and he quite suddenly changed lane. And I remember thinking, as he was changing lane, that's dangerous because we're going too fast and the road is now wet and it hasn't rained for a while, so the road is greasy. But anyway, he did, and the car went into a spin in the middle of a 3-lane highway. It started going end to end, spinning around. And I was in the back seat in the middle position, which I suppose I had the least amount of centrifugal force, because for me, it was like he stuck the indicator on, he went to change the lane, and then the car just started spinning. So I felt like I was kind of the center of the spin. So I wasn't thrown around too much. But what I did notice was that there was a bridge coming up. So we were spinning, but we were still moving forward. And I remember thinking, if we hit that bridge, it's not going to be good, because it was one of those concrete things, Now, luckily, the car spun. As it spun, the tail of the car went into the verge or the ditch or I don't know what you call it in America, the side of the highway, and we came to an abrupt stop. And so we'd all been spinning. There was general screaming. There was 5 people in the car, so there was general screaming and shouting. And then we hit the verge, and there was just silence. And there was this period of dead quiet. I don't know how long it lasted for, but it felt like it lasted for about 5 seconds, which is a long time. If you count to 5 slowly, that's 5 seconds. And then there was like more screaming and crying, and everybody went into shock, And I've seen that before with other kind of accident kind of things. And it feels like we're in that stage now. Not that we've come to an end. I think we're not at the end of this process by any stretch. But it feels like there's a period of quiet just now where there's a slight bit of, it depends on where, the person is in terms of consciousness. So you could say it's a bit of self-reflection, or other people, it's just like research, furious research. Other people are like, hang on a minute. I'm starting to see things on different social medias and just things popping up. Like, I kind of use the logarithms as a way for life to give me feedback. I know, for example, that YouTube is watching what I'm watching, and then it, says, hey, if you like this, you'll like this other thing. Okay. I know there's a mathematical thing in that, but then there's also, I have a feeling of, it's also a random generator, like a random number generator, which is a great way for life to give me feedback. And I've been doing that for, I don't know, consciously I've been doing it for a few years now, but it's a great way of watching logarithms and seeing what's going to pop up. Because there's an element of listening, the phone is listening to me as I'm talking and suggesting products that it thinks I'm going to like. There is an element of that. But then if you, I think because I approach it from a spiritual, behind the scenes, let's say, kind of perspective, it activates it, I think. Now, this could be complete delusion on my part, but, that's the thing about delusion, you just sort of pick one you like and don't worry about it too much. So what I've been noticing in what has been popping up on my different feeds is the beginnings, and I'm quite encouraged by this, the beginnings of questions about some of the important issues to do with COVID and to do with the lockdown. So, like quite early on in my own like the lockdown for me, I initially I was just seeing videos to do with how serious this was and people dying in Italy, which was a big thing for Ireland because it's so close, and how we have to flatten the curve and all these stuff everybody's heard. But then pretty quickly, like within, I don't know, a couple of weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks, I came across Dr. Zach Bush. And in one interview, no, it was an hour-long interview, he, number one, he just struck me as a genuine person. And very knowledgeable, very good on the facts, the sort of stuff I'm terrible with. Like he just was able to retain all the facts and, statistics and numbers and it's great. And he pretty much just outlined what his perspective on why COVID had happened, and viruses and immunity and lots of things that just made huge sense to me. And I found it very disturbing at the time, because it was like, well, yeah, so everything that is coming across in the media is probably not right, but yet everybody is believing this. So what is going on? Now I'm starting to see some of the things that he was saying being reflected in other things, and people starting to look at other issues like why did we go into lockdown? Like, why did we just obediently go into lockdown? And why was it suggested that was the right thing to do? And there, like, what I'm hoping is going to come is questions about health, like why did we get to the situation where our immune system, our understanding of the immune system is so limited? Why are we, like I saw a cartoon the other day, and it was like two windows, like at the DMV, and there was a big long queue behind one window, and there was nobody at the other window. There's just this one person behind the counter sort of scratching themselves. And the big long queue, the one with the big long queue above the window, it said pills, maybe it said vaccines, pills, vaccines, something like that. Yeah, pills. And then over the other window, it was lifestyle changes. That was very cute way of highlighting where the conversation has been, because I found it surprising that people, very intelligent people, were just like talking about vaccines, and nothing wrong with vaccines, but as Dr. Zach talks about in his from his perspective, like the idea of vaccines is fine, but the vaccine for COVID, the COVID will probably have run its course by the time the vaccine is made, because COVID-19, like even the fact that nobody is going, hey, how did we survive 18, 17, 16, 15? Like how it's not, why 19? And what about 20 and 21 and 22? Like, we're very focused on this one thing. Whereas his thing was like, yeah, SARS, MARS, they're all part of that COVID family, and they all run their course. And I mean, he talked a lot about pollution as well, and how pollution played a role in aiding the transport of the COVID virus, and how it bonded to it and made it, the combination of pollution and COVID made it so hard on people who were in environments where their lungs are already compromised by a lot of pollution. So in this kind of quiet time, I'm starting to see, and I'm very encouraged by seeing these little percolations of questions about that. And I think that kind of goes to an underlying process that's happening, which is to do with what the questioner was saying earlier on about certainty and adapting to change. And that is to do with what I started off talking about. I didn't mean to bring this in a nice big circle, but it's come back anyway, to that the this question of an external authority telling you about your reality, like somebody telling me that Bermuda exists and going, if you don't think Bermuda exists, you're a fool. That's kind of what the world says to me, right? And you should just believe us, because I've been there, man. I've been to Bermuda and I'm telling you it exists. That's kind of what the world is saying to me. And I'm kind of going, well, I'm not disagreeing with you. I just thought it's not part of my reality. And you could say, well, but why isn't it? It's like, well, my car isn't part of my reality. My kitchen, because I'm not in my kitchen, it may not exist. I don't know if it exists. It was there, but now it's not there. And you go, well, that's ridiculous. What are you talking about? And why would you even think like that? And because there's a huge amount of baggage, internal baggage we have by keeping all that going. Like if I'm firmly convinced that my kitchen, my living room, my garage, my shed, my garden, that it all is going on right now. And I'm like, I firmly believe that that all exists right now. That's a lot of space and bandwidth inside me. And it obscures what's actually happening now, which is I am just, here. It's like what I talk about in the gentle snap about you can't see the back of your head. You've never seen the back of your head. It's an assumption to think you've the back of your head. My God, that's just philosophical wanking. Like, who cares? Why would you think about that? And why does it matter? And in one way, it is a little bit like that. But why it matters and why it's significant, I think, is because it's like, why have you never wondered about that? Why have you never wondered about your own face that you've never seen? Why have you just taken it that you've got a face and that it's the same as everybody else's? Like that's a very huge assumption to never wonder about. I mean, you can wonder about it and go, yeah, no, I definitely have a face. Okay, that's fine if that's what you arrive at. But to never wonder about it, to just take it, to never question it, to never look at it, that's a big thing to just not do. And I think that's kind of what is happening in a big way for lots of people. Now, I think if everybody really started to wonder about their face, there would be a lot more chaos than there currently is. But so it's in things like COVID and lockdowns and whatever, but it's heading towards that. It's like of coming right into what is really your experience, like this experience of reality. What is it? What happens in the morning when we wake up and become conscious? What even is consciousness? Like, and who am I? Who is this person that's saying these words? Like, what is this that's coming through this apparent body? Like, where do I go when I go asleep? That's why I really like that Billie Eilish song. I was just, I mean, I like her music anyway, but then, it's all bopping away and it's all, I was watching the video for it. I was like, yeah, I like this. This is cool. And then I can't remember the line, but it's like, something like, where do we go to when we're asleep? And I thought, wow, isn't that great? That's kind of what I'm talking about, life giving feedback. It's like, great, isn't it great that she thought about that and she wonders about that, and she's singing this to, whole new generations and that's a song, so music's powerful. It's all going in there. Where do we go to when we go to sleep? Yeah, I thought that's great, and that's a sign of, to me, it's a sign of this kind of growing consciousness that's coming, because like one of the things about further emergence is that feeling of disorientation and of things that seemed like, it's almost like questions come up that you didn't even think of, where questions are suddenly questions. I'm not saying everyone should be wondering about their own face or anything like that, but it's questions like that that begin to deconstruct certainty about what's happening, and that kind of certainty is what a lot of people are dealing with, the crumbling of that kind of certainty, because it's been forced on them at the moment. But if you're gone through further emergence, then if you can begin to gently question things about your experience, like what do I know? What do I know? Not what am I told, but what do I actually know? And that, it starts with extreme things like back of your head, your face, Bermuda, your kitchen, things like that. But through wondering about those things and just kind of take an inventory of, what do I actually experience? What do I know? And what am I being told? It's amazing how this is my experience anyway. And I don't go around like with this all the time, but it's very important to feel it. But when I let go of all my assumptions and go, what do I actually know? Suddenly existence just becomes this, what's in front of me. And it goes from being this idea of, here's a planet with a little person perched on it, to it kind of falls inwards, and it's like this little orb that I'm looking into, and I'm putting my hands through these kind of puppety glove things to feel sensations through. And that can be very trippy to feel. But for me anyway, that's all I know. That's what I know. And then the rest, my kitchen, my bedroom, my wife, my daughter, other people, like the reality for me right now is I'm talking to myself in a room with, bits of metal and plastic in front of me called phones and lights and whatnot. But, it's funny actually, because I was going to say like the other people don't exist, but like there's very little in existence that I see anyway that is really real. But one of the things that is real is communication. So even though there isn't another person here, the fact of communicating, the fact that I'm hearing myself saying these things is a form of communication. But then also knowing that, because there's other people on the they're still there. There's other people on the other end who are giving me there's a communication going on with them as well. So, right. That's quite a bit of ground to cover. Okay, so yeah, I think we'll wrap it up at that. If anyone's got any more questions, feel free. But yeah, if not, we will leave it at that for now. So Thanks very much for joining me. And yeah, we'll chat again at the next Zoom group. All right. Bye.